Welcome to the Greybeard Show YouTube channel. Today's series, it's okay to quit. And you know what I want you to know, what quitters look like? They look like me, okay? They look like me. 3 businesses built from the ground up, multiple 7-figure revenue years. Hundreds of people I've hired, led, and mentored over 30 years in the field. And every single one of those wins, every last one started with me quitting a job that was stealing my soul. So before you tell me quitting is weakness, I need you to sit with that for a second. We have been sold a story about quitting that has kept good people in wrong places for decades. The story goes like this. Strong people stay, committed people push through, winners don't quit, and anyone who walks away from something hard is, by definition, not built for success. That story sounds noble. It even sounds true, but here's the problem with it. It makes no distinction between quitting something because it's difficult and quitting something because it is genuinely destroying you. And those are not the same thing, not even close. There is a version of staying that is admirable. The entrepreneur who keeps going when the market is hard, the athlete who trains through real pain toward a real goal. The marriage that pushes through a difficult season towards something deeper on the other side. That kind of staying has purpose behind it. It's going somewhere. And then there is another version of staying. The version where you are grinding away at something that stopped serving you years ago. In a role that was never built for who you actually are. Working for people who would replace you tomorrow without losing a night's sleep. And you are calling that commitment. You are calling that strength. When what it actually is, and I say this with the full weight of someone who has lived it, it actually is fear wearing the costume of loyalty. I want to tell you about a season of my life that I don't talk about as often as I probably should. Early in my career, before any of the businesses, before any of the wins, I was in a role that looked fine from the outside. Decent money, some stability, the kind of thing people would have told you to be grateful for. And I was miserable. Not in a dramatic, obvious way, in that quiet, low-grade, Sunday evening dread kind of way that a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you're not in crisis, you're just slowly disappearing from your own life. A little less of yourself every Monday morning until you start to forget who you were before the job got its hands on you. I stayed longer than I should have because leaving felt irresponsible, because I had people depending on me, because I had bought the story that walking away meant I wasn't tough enough to make it work. And every month I stayed, I paid for that story with something I couldn't get back. Time, energy, a piece of my identity I was slowly handing over in exchange for a paycheck that barely covered the cost of my own unhappiness. The day I finally left, I didn't feel relieved at first. I felt terrified. And then about 2 weeks later, something started coming back. We'll call it clarity, call it energy, call it the version of yourself that the wrong environment had been quietly suffocating. Whatever you call it, it came back for me. And what I built from that point forward, I built from a place of genuine alignment that I had never had access to when I was grinding for someone else's vision in a role that was never mine. That is not a motivational story. That is the actual sequence of events for me in my life. And I'm convinced that the decision to leave that job was one of the most important decisions of my professional life, not because of what I walked toward, but because of what I stopped allowing to be done to me in that job. So let me give you a framework, because I'm not up here telling everyone to quit their job on a feeling. That is not what this is. What I am saying is that there is a set of conditions under which staying is not virtue. It is self-abandonment. And I want you to be able to identify those conditions clearly. First, When the job is costing you your health, sleep, physical health, mental health, these are not negotiable currencies. If what you are doing for a living is systemically destroying your body or your mind, no paycheck justifies that. None. The math on the trade is never in your favor, no matter what the number in your bank account says. Second, when the job has become your identity instead of your employment. This one is subtle, and it's dangerous. When you stop being a person who works somewhere and start being the job, when the role defines you so completely that you can't answer, "Who are you?" without referencing your title at your job, you have given something away that is very hard to get back. You were a person before that job. You will need to be a person after it. Don't let the middle hollow you out. Third, when there's genuinely no path forward that leads somewhere you want to go. Growth matters, not just financially, but professionally, intellectually, as a human being. If you can look at the next 5 years of staying where you are and see clearly that you will be the same version of yourself with slightly more tenure and slightly more resentment, that is the information you need. A job without a trajectory is a slow leak on your potential. Fourth, and this one is the hardest to say out loud. When you already know. Because most people who are in a job that's stealing their soul already know it. They don't need a framework. They need permission. They need someone who has been on the other side of that decision to look them in the eye and tell them that what is waiting for them when they leave is worth the fear of leaving. Let me tell you, it is worth the fear that you have right now. That feeling, that life you want is on the other side of that. So here it is plainly, okay? It is absolutely worth it. The fear on the other side of this decision is always smaller once you get there than you ever could have imagined. Whatever that fear is, that boogeyman, it's not there. I want to give you something practical before I close this out, because inspiration without application is just entertainment. And this is not what I'm here for. If you're in a job right now that you suspect is taking more than it's giving, I want you to do one thing this week. Just one. I want you to get a blank piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On one side, write down everything the job is giving you. Be honest and be generous. Include the stability, the insurance, the routine, whatever is genuinely good about it. On the other side, write down everything it's costing you. And I mean everything. The Sunday dread, the person you are when you come home, the conversations you're not having with your kids because you're depleted, the dream you've stopped mentioning because it feels too far away from where you are right now. Then look at both sides. Not to make the decision in that moment, but to stop lying to yourself about what the actual exchange rate is. Because most people who are staying in the wrong place have never done that math honestly. They've only looked at the one side of the ledger. They've not looked at both. You don't have to quit tomorrow. You don't have to have the next thing figured out before you acknowledge that this thing isn't working. But you do owe yourself the truth about what is actually happening. Start there. The next step is a way of becoming clear once you stop pretending the current one is fine. I've built 3 businesses from scratch. I had years where the revenue was extraordinary and years where I had to rebuild from almost nothing. And the common thread through every chapter of this story, the thing that has been true without exception, is that my best move started with an honest assessment of where I was and the courage to act on what I saw. The job that is stealing your soul, it's not your destiny. It is a chapter, and chapters end. The question is whether you end this one on your terms, with your head held high and your direction chosen, or whether you let it end you first and call it stability. Let me encourage you. You were built for more than this. I genuinely believe that, and I want you to start believing it too. If this video gave you something you needed today, hit subscribe. I put out content like this every week. Real talk about business, life, and what it actually takes to build something worth having. Drop a comment below and tell me what your version of the soul-stealing job looked like. I read everyone. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today. This is how this community grows, one honest conversation at a time. And if this conversation left you wanting to go even deeper, the Greybeard Show podcast is available on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen. Head to greybeardmentoring.com for additional resources, free tools, and everything else we have available to help you build the life and business you were meant to have. Links are below, and thank you for watching.